everybody, it's week 13 of our Victory Garden series, and we have had another really rainy week. So this is the third or fourth week in a row. I grabbed the rain gauge, it's full, which means we've had at least 4 inches of rain, if not more. Some of it might have splashed out. So as we go through the garden today, I think just keeping in mind that that's going to really have a lot of impact on your garden versus if we had stayed hot and dry like we were earlier this year. So we'll go take a look at some of the specific things that are going on.
All right, so a lot of our stuff in here is doing really well based on this weather, and we're getting good harvest starting to come in. We're going to revisit a few things that we looked at last week that weren't doing quite as well. So we've got this kale plant we were looking at last week, and we weren't sure if it was a disease or if the plant was just not thriving. We pulled off all of the yellow, dying leaves last week, but as you can see, whatever was affecting it is getting even worse. So we're going to pull this entire plant, and in order to not infect the other plants, we're going to throw it in the garbage instead of the compost pit. Unless you've got a really hot compost that could potentially kill pathogens, but probably in your backyard bin it's not going to get that hot. So you're going to want to remove this plant so it doesn't affect future crops. Cool.
It almost looks like this root system didn't quite fully develop, and that does make me wonder if either if there was just a problem with this transplant and the roots just didn't kind of break out of their root ball, or there are diseases that affect the root system, but that root system does not look good. So
all right, and then we're looking at our cabbage again. So just like the kale, we've got these 3 really nice plants, and then we've got this one on the edge, and this one was having a little bit of issue with rot in the leaves last week. And now, as we can see, another week has passed and the leaves are continuing to rot. And now this cabbage, you can kind of tell when it's ready to harvest by how dense it is. So this I can tell is really, it's really dense and firm and filled out. So this, would be something I would just cut and just, pull off any of the rotted leaves. But so you can at least have, a cabbage to eat. And then the other 3 are looking really nice, and I would just let them keep getting bigger because they can get quite a bit bigger and they look super healthy. So here we are filming our really educational and informative Victory Garden segment, but I found this super cool rock, and I just want to say that sometimes we're all focused on trying to grow food, but make sure to take some time to just really appreciate what you're finding out in nature, whether it be birdsong or cool insects or this really sweet rock that I found and don't want to put down. So, have a little fun out there.
And speaking of fun, here's some of our really pretty little purple flowers. What are these called again?
Ageratum?
Ageratum. And here we are at our beets. We have some beets that are edible size now, and you can either go ahead and harvest all your beets at once so that you can put some other plants in, or what we're going to do here is we're just going to harvest the biggest ones out, and then that'll leave room for some of the ones that are still a little bit smaller to get bigger. But yeah, we've got some beets that are eating size now. And don't forget that in addition to eating the roots, you can also eat the tops. And you could leave these in longer. They would get bigger, but these are also a nice edible size. And we're gonna check out our carrots again too. Last week we pulled one and saw that we just had a little carrot on there. So let's see. Ah, yes. So now we're really getting somewhere with these carrots. I would guess next week we might actually have some that are a good size to eat. And it's so muddy today, it's hard to see, but look at the awesome color on this carrot.
Here we are at the beans. So our green beans, we got our first harvest last week, and I think, Sue, you said you were here on Monday picking them? Yep, Monday, and it is now Wednesday, and you can see that the beans are doing pretty well. So I noticed this on my own farm, that I was trying to get away with only picking them twice a week, but with weather like this, wet and pretty temperate, hot days, cool evenings, like your stuff is going to be growing really well, and these provider beans are just super nice and productive. So you are going to want to make sure that you're getting out there, or having, you know, somebody, family member, neighbor, something, getting out there and making sure to keep up with your harvesting so your plants don't get out of control. So if you remember a couple of weeks ago, we had to pull out 3 of our 4 pepper plants because they just looked really like they had a disease or they had some issue. But our 4th pepper plant, still looking really nice. Good green leaves, only like a little bit of, you know, dying back around the edge of some of these leaves, totally normal. And as you can see, we've also got these 2 really nice sized peppers, so we can start harvesting those, and then yeah, we'll have a decent amount of peppers coming off of our single plant. So that's awesome. And on to another thing we looked at last week is this broccoli. So this broccoli last week was, I don't know, maybe like this big, and we weren't sure if it was ready to harvest. The curd is looking a little bit less less uniform than we would expect, so we weren't sure what to do with it last week, and it was probably a good idea for us to leave it because it seems to have done really well in this weather. So now we've got this massive broccoli head, and I think potentially it could grow even larger, but I think we'll probably harvest it this week just because it's probably like a 2-pound broccoli, and that's pretty wild. And our other broccoli is also starting to head out, and they look a little bit different. The curd looks a little bit strange, probably because of all the heat stress from the weather we've had lately. But we will just kind of keep an eye on them, and hopefully they'll get nice and big like this first one.
Okay, and this is crazy. If I can get the picture, check out the size of this acorn squash that we have already. Yeah, this particular year and this particular garden is just going crazy with the winter squash, and I think it probably has a lot to do with the amount of compost that we added to the soil. Now we're going to take a look at the compost pile. I moved it a few weeks ago, I think, and we'll just kind of take a look. As you can see, digging in here, we're getting some nice decomposition. You can see we've got, almost looks like soil in here. So this is looking really good, and the thing to do now is I will use the fork to turn it over and mix it up again so that it can keep decomposing.
All right, well, here we are to take a look at a few of the weeds and cover crops we've got growing. So we've got some really nice clover here that you might be able to see is this nice patch. It's really taking up a lot of space and preventing a lot of weeds from growing. But then we also do have some weeds. Sue, do you want to say anything about what we should do with all these weeds?
Yeah, weeds. I mean, you're always going to want to be paying attention to weed control in your garden, but a couple things to keep in mind are that even if they get out ahead of you, try not to let them go to seed, because if they start going to seed like this one is, then you're just really creating problems down the road. So even if you can't get around to doing all of your weeding, as soon as you see things starting to head up, you want to at least get those seed heads cut off and out of your garden. And the other thing I wanted to say about weeds right now is just that with such a wet summer, I feel like we could be having some airflow issues in our garden a little bit, and weeds are certainly not going to help with that at all. So you're really going to want to try to keep the weeds out of the way so that you can get some more airflow into this extremely wet garden.
All right, well, I think that's about what we've got for you this week, checking out how our garden's doing and few pointers for you in your own garden. We also want to encourage you. We're doing a Q&A and happy hour in the garden in about 3 weeks. So check your emails if you haven't heard about that, or you can get a hold of Mike or get a hold of one of us. Leave a comment on the video if you want to know more. We're just going to be doing a walk around outside here, taking a look at the garden and just facilitating some conversation and trying to build some more community with all of our Amory area victory gardeners. So for sure, take a look if you're interested in that.
Yeah, and also just a reminder to do, if you're able to do some record keeping about the produce that you're harvesting from your garden. Last week I was able to harvest and take to the food bank 8 cucumbers, about a dozen zucchini, 3 bunches of basil, 1.5 pounds of beans, and then I'll be taking a bunch of things tomorrow because we have quite a bit to harvest right now. So yeah, just a reminder, if you can keep notes on that, that would be great.
It'd be fun to find out how we're all doing.
Yeah.
And I guess with that, it's week 13, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.